Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Shiggles. I'm that guy Rickster.
Hi, Darren here, guys.
Okay. And before we get into it, we're going to ask the question, or I'm going to ask the question, how was your week?
Busy, but it's all right.
Just dry,
It
so
seems
busy,
so.
but it's all right.
Same way. Now, how have your
Okay.
how was your week?
Tiring. I
I
am
mean,
so tired.
yeah, the
I
same.
just want to sleep.
Yeah, like 3, 4, 5 more days of sleep.
Right?
Mm.
Speaking of which, see, yawning. Oh, I'm
And for the
really
persons that
tired.
have been sending me your feedback, I want to thank you so much. The positives, the negatives, the support. Thank you. I know
I'm
some
glad
people
you're getting
haven't been getting
feedback.
some, so they feel a little bit
I
jealous.
have not been getting
So for
feedback, so
my
I'm glad
friends,
you
so for
are.
my friends, or for the people who have reached out to me, I know maybe it's well, you know me, so I guess it's a little bit comforting. And a lot of people have said that they haven't heard me talk much. I don't
Speak
really talk
before.
much on social media. I like just post and dip. Um, Everything I say here is 100% how I act or the truth or what I feel. I'm glad to be able to share that aspect of my personality with you. But if you know me enough,
Okay.
you would know that I'm talkative. I just don't know y'all, but some of y'all. But yeah.
Yeah. You have to get comfortable before you let
Yeah,
loose.
and Rick friends, please send him some feedback.
I mean, I don't feel anyway. As long as we're getting positive feedbacks, I'm
Mm,
fine. Even
mm.
if they're not coming from my friends, it's okay. I'm good.
So this week,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's gonna be a little bit heavy, I think, but it'll also be a little bit funny too, based on some of the things that we can talk about. But
Yeah.
let's get into it. So we're gonna be discussing death and grief and the different ways we handle that, to deal with that, the different types of grief that we have to deal with, all of that jazz. So
Okay.
let's get into it. What's death like for you? What's grief like for you?
Oh, just coming in heavy. Okay. Um,
You gotta come heavy sometime.
Jesus Christ. For me, I wouldn't say I'm a person who cries a lot. So it takes it takes a lot for me to get to the point where I'm going to cry. When it I don't I've lost people close to me over the years, but I remember really feeling it when a friend of mine passed a few years ago. And I think why it hit me so hard when he died is because we were literally just texting a few weeks before, and then I just heard that he passed. So like I wept. And I don't really get to that point where I am positively howling. So usually when it comes to handling death and grief, I would say, even though I have found out in recent years that I'm somewhat of an emotional person, um, I don't tend to really show it that much, if that makes sense.
It does because people rarely get to see certain emotions of mine.
Yeah.
I think emotions where I'm sad or on the verge. In fact, I'm a very emotional person. It's just that things have just been going on in my life for so long. I've been able to keep it to myself, meaning I cry a
Mm-hmm.
lot, but I would wait until I get around my own space, get in my own space. That's when like I'll cry and stuff like that. But in terms of like in public or allowing people to see me in that state, it's like a never. Um, if you
Yeah.
have, it's probably because I was in a situation where I had no choice, to be honest.
Yeah.
But just like you, I had a friend who passed in 2015, and I think I have lost people before. I have experienced death before, but that was the start of what it truly meant to lose someone. And I lost it. I couldn't work. I couldn't finish working.
Yeah.
Um, at the funeral, like I just kept crying. It was just emotional. Like it was really, really, really emotional. For me. And I think that's is at that point that I started really looking at it that that is something that's inevitable. Nothing in life is
Mm-hmm.
promised, but death. It's the one thing that we are all
You know
sure
what's
of.
going to happen.
So at that point, I kind of started living my life where, of course, I don't want to die, but it's something that I know will happen, and I've come to terms that if it is that when it does happen, it was my time. There was this funny meme at
Yep.
one point. It was like, "Oh, suck your mom, suck dick or let your mama die." And the girl was like, "Oh, I'm sucking dick. If it's her time to go, it's just her time. It's her time." And from I've heard this maybe like 9, 6, 7 years ago, but from I've heard that even though it was
Yeah.
a funny moment, I really took it into perspective that we have no control over death. When it
We really
happens,
don't.
it's going to happen. As much as we don't want to think about it, we're not ready to die yet. It's the one thing we're all sure of.
And there's this sentiment of gone too soon.
It's
To
not too
me,
soon. It's that was just your
I've
time.
always said if it was just your time, it was just your time. Yes, it might have been tragic sometimes how the person passed,
Or sudden.
but or sudden, but if it was just your time, it was just your
That was a
time.
destiny for that
And
person.
you know how some people say they don't want to die, they fear death? I don't think I've ever had like a
Fear
fear
of
of
death.
death
Yeah.
because I knew it's going to happen. So
I mean, I have a fear of how don't want to die, but
that's the thing.
not the fact that I will die. And someone made an interesting perspective to me once that we have this idea that middle age um is 50s and 40s, but that is assuming you're going to live that long. You're
Mm-hmm.
assuming that you're going to live until you're 80 or 100. No, your middle age could be 15 because you're going to die at
There you
30,
go.
right? So when I
Yep.
heard that perspective, I started looking at life in a different way. And there's this song, um there's two songs that I associate with my life coming to an end. I know it's kind of dark to think about it, but
That's somewhat morbid,
it
but
is,
okay.
but it's just like I've been through a lot. Um
Yeah.
and there's this One Republic song called I've Lived, and it's basically
Mm-hmm.
saying that you've done everything that you could in life and all of that, and when that moment come, you'll just say, at least I lived, I did it all. um
Yeah.
and it's a similar not similar song with Chris Allen called Live Like We're Dying, and it's just basically saying that you got to show people that you love them, you got to tell people that you love them, you got to show up for them. You got to live like we're dying, because technically we are dying, we're
Yeah.
not getting closer, we're getting, the more time goes along, we're getting further from birth and closer to death. So you got to make those moments
Yeah.
count and stuff like that, and that's just how I look at it. It will happen one day.
Yep. And what something that changed my perspective on life was something my mother said to me. And I guess she just said it in passing, but I don't think she realized the effect it had on me.
Hmm.
But when I was 17 and my birthday was like a week away, I kept saying, I'm 18, I'm 18. And she's like, no, you're not. And I guess she got annoyed at me because I just kept saying I'm 18. And she's like, listen, if you should die at 11:59 and on November 4th, you died at 17. You're not 18 as yet. And ever since then, whenever I make it to my birthday, I'm like, yep, another year. I'm here. I,
and
I, ever since then.
and someone said that, oh, you pass your, just like how you pass your birthday every year, you also pass your death
Hmm.
day too. You just don't know as yet.
Right? That okay. That
Yeah.
just woke something up because that's true. Because you just
You just don't know what you pass it.
yeah,
You pass your death
the years
anniversary
change, but the days are
the
always the
same.
same.
Yeah. But
Mm.
let's talk about how people handle grief now.
How do you handle grief?
Um, in the past, I guess I could say that I think about the moments a lot with that person. It's like,
Yeah.
for instance, when my friend died, I was happy to say that, I've always been a good friend to them. Even before they died, like 3 months before, ironically, like it was their birthday, like I'd got them gifts and stuff like that. I'd went to see them. And I know it's corny, but I'm this sort of friend. Like I'd wrote like a whole, because this friend did a lot for me when I was struggling sometimes. And like I wrote a whole letter in the card, just expressing my gratitude for their friendship, always being there for me. From the day I met them up until this time. And it's like when they passed months after, things started coming back into perspective that I think they kind of knew that they were going to, but they didn't say anything because they died of cancer. And
Yeah.
for me, it's just that I tried to, in their passing, like even when like my grandmother died, I tried to think about all the good moments we had, all the things we discussed and stuff like that. And it's like we knew this day would come at some particular point, so I try not to beat myself up about it too much,
Yeah.
um but I'm not one of them dramatic persons when people die. And I must say why I say
Okay.
dramatic.
Yeah, because you have some people where months,
Yeah.
years, they are weeping and wailing
And
for months,
if especially
which is fine.
especially if this person was integrated in your life every
Yeah.
day, it I understand. But you go to your funeral and the person says, "Why, my mother," and they're
Right?
jumping down they're rolling in the dirt.
Want to drop in the grave
And
and stuff like
and
that.
I'm always like, it's serious, but is it that serious? But they always say you don't understand a person's grief sometimes, and different people handle things
That's how
differently. But
they
let me say
handle it.
this: whenever I see people acting like that, I don't care the situation at all. It is always funny as it
I'm going to laugh.
is always funny. And
I will laugh.
I had an aunt that did that multiple times, going down in the casket, all of that, laying on the
Because in
top of
my head, I'm also saying, why are you trying to make this day about
a
you?
whole scene.
It's not about you,
And then
girl.
when you
Chill.
bring it up, it's like, oh, I did all that. So in my mind, I'm like, did you black out or something? Because we also have you on
Clearly.
video. We also got you on video, so I'm
But then that's
confused.
the thing, like sometimes they don't even realize what is going on in the moment. They're just letting all the emotions wash over them. But let's switch gears again a sec. What about how you grieve losing friendships? Not like the person died, but
Mm,
like you were friends
mm,
with this
mm,
person for
mm.
years, and then all of a sudden they're no longer in your
You
life.
stole the
They're
words.
still
You stole the
there.
words right out of my mouth, and I don't think people
Yeah.
understand that this level of grief is way more complex and complicated than if the person actually died. When the
Yes,
person
it is.
died, you're 100% sure this person no longer exists or will ever
Yep.
exist in your life again. When you have to grieve the loss of a friendship or really any type of relationship, and knowing that this person is alive out there, whether it be that person decides not to communicate to mend
Talk to you
things or whatever,
anymore.
or it was your decision, is one of the hardest things because your brain knows that this person is alive. So grieving the loss of this friendship or this connection, especially like the good times and stuff that you have, like, is the absolute worst. You spend days,
Mm-hmm.
weeks, depending on the seriousness of the relationship, um, just grieving the loss of this person. And I quote lyrics a lot. Um,
That
Avril.
quote shows.
Avril Lavigne have this song where she said like, let's talk this over, it's not like we're dead. And every single time
Yeah.
I hear that lyric, I'm like, a lot of times when you're grieving like the loss of a friendship or some sort of relationship or something like that, most times there's also a lack of communication in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Yep.
people just decide not to talk. And every time I hear that lyric is I'm like, yeah, because we're not dead, we're still very much alive, probably in the same place. Why is it that we can't meet and talk to communicate to even create that level of closure to say, hey, this is what happened,
Yeah.
this is what happened, I did this, I did that, but we no longer will be friends. It's easier for you to move past the situation like that unless, sorry, I lost my train of thoughts. It's easier to move past the situation in that way because you had a conversation and you guys decided to end it, move apart. If it was
Yeah.
just left open, no communication, anything like that, so you have to grieve the loss of this.
Because it has happened to me before. And I've said this to you, and I think you know this. Like, I'm a really loyal person. If I'm friends with you, we are friends till the end, bitch. It's going to take a lot for me to walk away from the friendship. But I have had friends who, well, it's two at this point, where they just get up one day and just all communication ceased. One, I know what caused the communication to end abruptly, because he didn't only just do it to me, he did it to everybody in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then I get like updates from people saying, hey, I saw such and such. And mind you, these two persons are people who said I was their best friend, right? So if you call me a best friend, I expect that if something is going on, you should can say it to your best friend. So with the first one, as I said, like, it wasn't just me, he cut everybody off. And I'm like, I wish him well, as long as he's okay, that is fine. The second one, I don't understand at all. And then that's the thing. You said, like, there's no closure. You don't know what happened. Like, you just wake up one day and this person just sees all communication with you, and you're like, what did I do? Was it something I said? Like, and if we are such good friends, best friends, why couldn't you like say something to me? And every now I get no one again, I get the urge of like, because we have mutual friends, of wanting to like ask, hey, how is such and such? But I don't. Because bear in mind, this other one is the second time that they did something like that. And then a friend of ours, their mom passed, and then he just messaged me out of the blue, and like ever since that we're like back together, like we just clicked, like we like nothing had changed. But this time it has been years now, and I'm just letting it go at this point. I'm not saying it didn't hurt when it just
Yeah.
happened, but at some point you just have to realize that it might not have anything to do with you. It could be all to do with them and what they're going through at that time. Maybe they have I don't you don't want to put everything on mentals, but maybe they have things going on that you really just don't understand. So them having to like stop talking to you has nothing to do with you, and all has to do with them and what they're going through. And you just have to let it go and move on at some point. If the friendship continues after that, then it's not going to be the same, but at least they're still there, I
And
guess.
what I've learned from situations like that is sometimes we overplay the role we have in people's life, meaning that
Mhm.
yes, we agree that we're best friends, but in terms of how I hold you as a best friend, in terms of how you hold me, it might be on two different levels.
Completely
So
different.
when the expectations for you is high and certain things you just want to do to that person for that person is not the same. And I grieved
Mhm.
the loss of the last best friend that I had, and I'm like, I had this person up here, and we got to be careful of this, and it makes the grieving process way longer too, is because how we love and how we value friendships and stuff like that. I have to constantly remind myself not a lot of people do, and for some people it's a very casual thing. It's not that deep to them,
Yeah.
even though they might say, oh, we're besties, whatever, but it's not that deep to them. So when situations like this happen, for the person who was just casual, it's just like, okay, whatever. But for the person who was actually really invested in this friendship, is like they got to be grieving so long. And I think about this for myself because all of the best friends that I've had, except the one that died, like from time to time they do come back to my mind because these were people who I integrated so much into my life. um
Yeah.
it's hard living sometimes, having to still grieve this person that they're no longer in your life, but they're very much alive, and I'm like, something
Yes.
pops up and I'm like, this is the person I would talk to about this. This is the person I would send this meme. And those things are that make the grief harder. Um, but a lot of time things like ego and pride and guilt and all of that prevent, that conversation from happening. And as I said, the person who is or who was more invested just it sucks. It's a
It
worse.
really
It's a
does
worse
suck.
type of grief. People have died, and I've feel sad or cried about it for like 2 or 3 days and got over it, come to terms with it. But the grief where people are
We're
alive,
still here.
that's just something that I don't know. It's like almost like it just never goes away.
Yep. And what I always say, like I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, you know what? I wish them well. As long as you're okay, I wish you well. There's
I
nothing
will
I
say
can do
that
about it.
sometime, but innately I'm such a lover of friendships and good quality relationships. It's just that sometimes I do slip up and I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't have to be grieving over this person that's alive. I wish that we
Oh
could
no, don't
actually
get me
still be
wrong. I
friends.
do go through that point. I go through that moment as well. But after a while, you have to just get to a
Where
point
you
where
have
you
to
just say,
learn
you
how
know
to
what?
live. Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is, and you just have to wish them well and move on.
It's the worst.
Because they're continuing to live. You don't know if they're even thinking about you. So why are you going to sit down and
Spend
spend your
your
entire
time.
day
And
with them on your mind? You
this
have to move on.
this grief is also similar as well when you have to stand on business and cut people off. um
Yeah.
this could have been a friend, family member, whosoever, but you love that person so much, but it's like whatever that person is doing is just not aligning with the type of person you are, or the relationship that you want to have is not something that you really want to do. But you just gotta be like, I gotta cut these people off. There's a grief that comes with it that this is not something that I wanted to do, but I was forced to do per se. And
Yeah.
that grief make you feel guilty so much of having to sever those connections. Cause you're just like,
But
man, I wish you could have like just acted right, so I didn't have to do this.
yeah, and at the end of the day, there must have been a reason why you had to come to that conclusion.
Hmm.
So it is better for you and your
Mental.
mentality
Hmm.
to not have that person around, which is why I said earlier with the friends, I don't know what was going on. Whatever was going on with them, it was just the choice for them at the moment, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. But we move.
Yeah, I
So the other type of grief I wanted to talk about, because this happened a couple of years ago. You remember when the whole robbery thing,
yes.
right? Yes, people who lose possessions, and like for instance a phone, right? And you've had this phone for 6 7 years, 8 9 10 years, but everything keeps being backed up, and then you just lose the phone and use all the pictures,
Oh,
the
that's the
videos
worst.
over the years.
That is the worst.
There's a level of grief that takes place there as well, because you cannot get back those
That's
memories.
the worst. That happened to me, and I remember like, so I'm the type of person where like certain pictures or certain events or moments, like I will capture it and I save it. I remember losing
Mm-hmm.
a phone at the time. I didn't have Google storage where I back up all my pictures and shit like that. And
I didn't have. I
someone was
wasn't paying for
asking
iCloud at
me
the time.
specifically about a picture, and then I'm the type of person like, just go in Google Photos, type in the year, the month, you find what you're looking for, and I'm like, damn, I really lost these very vital memories that I'd like to find right now. And it's almost like you
It
want to go
happened to
back in
me.
time and, you know, try not to lose the phone or something. And it's just like, but I get what you mean. It's the absolute
Yeah, it
worst.
happened to me, and immediately when I replaced my phone, I immediately started paying for
Same.
iCloud, because I'm not gonna go through that again. And I had to be like asking people like, "Oh, if you have photos, send them back to me because I don't have them anymore." Like the fuck. Also, if you guys hear anything in my background, my cat is trying to dig his way to come in my
I'm
room,
not hearing
and I've locked
nothing.
the door.
Cat is like,
But he's outside making a lot of
I'm not
noise.
hearing it. The echo cancellation and noise cancellation is really good.
That's good to know.
But yeah, grief is not something that I would. Different people handle it in different ways. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Um, the grief. Sometimes it makes you angry too, especially the grief where it comes with guilt, where you that person is alive. Sometimes I'm angry. I'm like, why the fuck did you do all of them things? Sometimes it make you angry,
right.
and I can see people be like, why, or beat themselves up, or like blame themselves for certain situations, or the person died, you never got enough time to spend around them, or all of that. It's very, very important. If you love somebody, your parents, your relatives, reach out. If you don't really have beef or any problems with this person that's preventing you from reach out more. You may never know. And don't wait until this person died to be like, oh my god, I wish I would have called more.
Exactly.
Do it. I know we're all busy or stuff like that, but at least try to spend time or even express to
Yeah,
the person that you love. You're gonna tell me, oh,
because you just never know when it's going to be
right,
the last
you're gonna tell
day,
me, oh, you love this uncle, this aunt, your mother so much, but you only speak to this person once a month, 6 months.
or even once a
A
year.
lot can change, especially when it comes to death in a person's life in a minute to 5 minutes.
Yep.
We gotta do better sometimes, so that we don't have
And
that
I
guilt of I didn't do enough, I didn't spend enough time with this person.
and I think that's why sometimes people wail whenever they're going through the motions,
Why,
because
my
I
brother?
can only speak for myself. When I found out my friend, I wasn't even able to go to the funeral because I he was in Jamaica, I'm here. But I this live streamed it on YouTube, and I was watching the funeral, and I don't know why the cameraman decided to pan over the casket and they showed him. And when I tell you, I wept. And I think the reason why I was crying so much is because one, I was just talking to him the month before because it was his birthday and was like happy birthday, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Two, he was the type of friend where we could go like 3 months not talking to each other. And then the moment we start talking is like we literally just finished talking yesterday. Like we picked up right where we left off all the time. And I just kept thinking I'm never going to talk to him again. I can never talk to this person again. And it was that, like, that crash, that wave crashed over me, and it was just too much to hold in. And that I think was the first time I've ever truly cried like that for someone. I didn't even know I could make those sounds.
Because you really have to come to terms you will never see, you will never
Yeah,
hear. Um, and it's like, for me, when that friend of mine died, it's like the places we used to bench and batty, two peas in a pod. We used to be everywhere, and it's like passing those places. It's almost like I'm seeing myself and the person there having fun, and it's a crazy thing to think about that. Those are all just memories now. I have to carry on this life without this person.
exactly. That's the
And I
thing.
remember this person's dream vividly, the things that we planned. And sometimes I did this thing, I realized for years I did this thing where the things we spoke about in terms of going back to school, going back to college, graduating, migrating, and everything like that, every single time one of those milestones have happened
Milestones.
for me that we decided would happen for both of us, I'm like, I know you're not here, but I did it. I did it for us.
Yeah.
And every single time something like that happens, like, it makes me sad because I'm like, it shouldn't have been me alone. And that's the kind of grief that comes with a younger person who people usually say, oh, they had their life ahead of them. for me it's like that. It's because I know, or I knew this person's dreams. I knew everything this person wanted to do or wanted to achieve, or the things that we planned to do, and it's like me doing them instead of us doing them together as we planned is just like,
It's just you.
it's really sad. um when my grandmother died, that one, it's it's not, I was sad of course, but it wasn't so bad. It's because she was elderly. I expected it to happen. You know, she was sick and all of that. So it's just like that's
Yeah.
something you start looking out for. I
It was the
hated
same for
I
me.
hated the fact though that um I don't think there's anybody else I would have wanted to be proud of me except her, because she's the person who raised
Yeah.
me. And I remember when I started UE and I was just like, I can't wait to graduate so that she can see that I finished university. She died the day I started UE.
Oh wow. Didn't know that.
I had the best day finally going back to university. Had so much fun, met new people, see what my new life would have been like for the sorry, for the next 3 years. I felt so happy. Got home, multiple missed calls from different people, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I I hope that's not what I think it is. And it was exactly that.
Yeah.
And that's what made me particularly sad about that. I'm like, damn, you couldn't wait? Three
Like you always have those
right?
questions. You always have those
You could have
questions.
waited. But yeah.
Well, speaking of grandmothers, it was kind of the same for me. I was really young when both my grandmothers passed. So I don't think like I understood what death was, but at the same time, I didn't fully understand what it meant for someone to die. So I didn't really grieve that much. Like people are crying all the time. I was like, okay, I'm just here walking around. But I remember one of my grandmothers, she would always pray to not be a burden on anyone,
Yes.
to not get sick
Yes.
and have to end up in the hospital. She doesn't want it to be too tragic. Like she
That
would
was
always
mine
pray this like
too.
every single night. And lo and behold, this lady just she was about to go fly to New York
Mm-hmm.
to look to stay with her daughter because she would go up come up every year and like stay with her daughter. And the other daughter that was there, they were going to take her to the airport. They're sitting on the veranda and she literally hugged her. She's sitting in the chair. She hugged her and she's like, you know, a long time I don't hug you up and kiss you. And literally, as soon as she kissed her on her cheek, she just fell on the ground and that was it.
No.
Honestly, that was the how it happened. It was she didn't feel any pain. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't. She wasn't sick. She wasn't a burden. What she prayed for all these years, that's exactly how it happened in an instant. And that goes back to what you said earlier. You just never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah. And my
Like 1 minute you're here, the next minute you're
my
gone.
grandmother was like that too. And a lot of times where people say, why are you so humble? Why are you so modest? Like about the things, and I'm like, to be honest, that's the woman who raised me, and I a lot of the traits like I subconsciously took from her. Um
Mm-hmm.
and she used to preach the same thing too. I do not want to be a burden to people. And all of that.
Yeah.
And it's just like that's exactly what happened. She was bedridden a little bit, but she could still walk, but she was not sick for this long extended period of time.
Yep.
And she just passed peacefully. And what's kind of funny is that she knew she was going to pass. I feel like she timed it
Yeah.
too, because I need to, she had like Alzheimer's or something like that. She was like, oh, I need to talk to all of my kids and see all of my kids, and thank you for coming and visiting me and all of that, da, 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 da. And that
Yeah.
was it.
Sometimes they know.
That was it.
Sometimes they know because I have multiple stories I could tell about family members who have passed over the years from illnesses, and the day that they passed, you it's like something shift in what they would normally do, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess you knew it was going to happen. This is the last one I'm going to say before we switch gears again. Like an aunt of one of my grand aunts, she was It was from cancer. She was in bed and for bedridden for months, and the entire time she was in bed, she would lay on her side. So there was she would just go from side to side. The day when she passed, she asked her sister, "Hey, could you get me some water?" No, first she asked her to turn her on her back. So she was laying on her back,
Mm-hmm.
and she asked, "Could you get me some water?" The sister goes around to get the water. By the time she goes to the room, that was it.
Hmm.
The one day she'd ask him to put her on her back. So it's like sometimes I think they know it's coming on. But as I said, let's switch gears because it's getting a bit heavy. What do you think of people who plan their funerals before
Oh, I would
it
absolutely do
happens?
some shit like that. Let me tell
You
you this.
would?
Let me tell you this. Right? And this is gonna come from like a true story. I Oh,
Yeah.
you should respect the dead, you should respect the dead. No.
No. Your face.
If this person was a terrible person in life, they should be treated as such when they die. I really do not care.
Uh-huh.
You should respect the dead if you wanted to be respected or be honorable when you died. Lead a good life. Treat people correctly. Don't do things that, have people resenting you. Why would you treat me terrible my entire life, try to kill me, do all of this, all of that, and then when you die, I'm always like, oh my god, he was such a good man, or she was such a no.
You hear the most lies
And
on a
it's very
funeral day
hypocritical,
about
because when
people.
my father died, that man was, and people who've known me know this, but if you don't know me, that man did the worst things to me. I was outed by that
Yeah.
man. That man tried to kill me. That man disowned me. He did everything bad that you could think about,
Yeah.
including attempting to kill me in my sleep. When this guy died, they wanted to be like, oh my god, my father. No, you were a terrible
But at
parent.
that point, nobody could have expected you to be
But
grieving
this
and
is the point,
weeping
and
and wailing over
this is
him.
where I had issues with my family to this day, because I'm like, y'all really never cared about me, because all of these things happened and it was pushed under the rug like it didn't happen. The next day, I was a kid. I didn't deserve that. I went through all of that, and then when he died, you're going to write in the eulogy, oh, he was a great father, he was a great husband to his wife and a loving father to his kids. No. and I l-
To which
and I
kid? That's the
laughed. I
question.
laughed at the funeral so loud. It was COVID. It was social distance. I just walked away. I'm not with the hypocrisy, and people should stop being hypocritical when people die. If they were terrible, you say that they were terrible. If they were good, you say
Mm-hmm.
that they were good. Stop making lies for people. I do not care that they died or not. And this is gonna sound really terrible, but I do not care. And it happens a lot. People need to stop that.
I like how the question went from would you plan your own funeral? What do you think of people who plan their
But I
funerals
would plan my
to
funeral,
stop being
and the
hypocrites?
reason why it got to that point is because I would
Yeah.
plan my funeral, because when you die, you really have no control over how you go,
You really
and
don't.
you might preach to your family that, hey, I do not want a funeral, I do not want X people at the funeral,
Which I have
um,
said.
and they still go and do that. So the reason why I would plan my funeral is because, one, I do not want to be buried. Two, I do not
Same.
want a funeral. I want to be
I
cremated.
want to be
I want to
cremated.
be cremated. You get a hall. You invite all the people that I liked and were good to me. Hence the reason why I diverted by saying I would want to. All the people I liked, and for me, it's a celebration. It's a celebration of the things that I liked while I was alive. The
Mm-hmm.
music, you listen to music I like. Look at the things that I used to like to watch, the places I used to like, things like that. I don't want my friends to be sad per se. Of course, you're gonna be sad that I'm gone, but celebrate the times that we had together.
And funerals are so
Exactly.
expensive.
All of this
I
money
just,
for what?
we just buried my grand uncle in March, and it was so
It
expensive.
is
Like everything was
expensive.
just so ridiculously expensive.
I
So I've said to my mother, because they live in Jamaica, I live here. Told her many times, chances are I'm going to pass away here. Please do not find millions of dollars to fly my body back home to Jamaica to bury me. Please to
exactly.
cremate me. Save that money to do something else. Cremate me, and you can hold me in your lap and fly on the plane to Jamaica and have a memorial. You don't need to have this big fanfare and excitement. I don't want that. That's
And
not who I am. This is how I want it to
exactly,
be.
and then this whole idea of and I've seen it a lot. I think these are the things where I'm like, I'm okay with people planning their funeral. If I never liked you, you weren't there for me when I was alive. Like, why are you here? Let me turn into just.
And
Let me turn
crying.
into
And why are you here
right. Let me turn into
crying?
Jocelyn Hernandez. How why is you here? No, because how why is you here? I do not like that, and I'm all for people planning their funerals before they
Yeah.
die.
Like, why I asked the question, did you see the video with La Roche talking about how he wants
Hmm.
his funeral to be? I when you talk about extra, that is extra. He has literally the outfit he wants
To be yeah,
people to
exactly,
wear.
and it's like
And he says he wants it to be 6 hours. He wants it to be a log
right
and drawn out.
because also you're gonna put me in a church. I do not want to go in a church. I'm sorry, no.
Hmm.
It's just these little things, and I'm just like, yeah, I would primarily because I want to do it in a way where like the attorneys know that only these names that I have written.
Not you having a guest list for your funeral.
Yes, only these names that I have written are
Uh,
allowed to enter.
so wait,
Because the same energy I am keeping when I was alive is the
so you're
same
going to have a
energy I'm
bouncer?
keeping. No, it's not a bouncer. It's going to be written up where I wouldn't say so will, but whatever is written up to the lawyers,
Your
the
wishes.
estate, right? The money is there for how I will be, cremated, all of that, where the event will
Yeah. I
be, who is invited, what will be done.
mean, that makes sense.
Me never like you,
I,
they're
I
on the
guess
guest
list.
list.
You can't
You
come
cannot
in.
come in. You were an aunt that treated me badly. I'm sorry you can't come. I remember that one thing you did when I was 9 years old that traumatized me, and I do not
Mm.
want you at my funeral to be like, oh, that was my nephew. No.
Which makes sense. Or before we go, talking about people who are very extra. So my mother works in the health sector, as you know, and whenever anybody dies in from the department, everybody turns out. So there's this one coworker who she's at the village crier. So at one particular nurse's funeral, this woman is just like weeping and wailing even after the funeral is finished and they're going back in the cars. So somebody was like, our sister that? And they were like, no, them just working. And so the guy's like, so why is she behave so?
Like she's
Do that
like
thing see her
right,
mother
she's
dead.
related to the person.
Like she did just she was just but the thing is she did just extra. Like she just always had to be the center of attention. Everybody did have to just see her, just extra.
People be like that.
Again, pulling focus from the person's funeral to yourself. Calm down. It's not about you.
Some
You'll have your day.
some people are just terrible at regulating their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a few times where when my grandmother passed that I really wanted to burst out wailing, but it's just like what, you're not gonna be doing all of that. The tears are flowing, but you're not gonna be doing all of that.
Yeah.
But
What do you think I okay. So I went to a funeral, right? And somebody went up. They weren't on the program. Somebody went up and they were talking. And one of the family members, her response was, then why Pearline up there, so? Somebody can't tell Pearline to come down. Pearline up there too long. Please to come down. So like things like that. Whenever there's a funeral and stuff like that happens, I'm sorry, I'm going to
yeah,
laugh. I
because a
cannot
little
hold it
drama,
in.
a
I am going to
little
laugh.
drama is good sometimes. But listen, that it happens. Um,
Yes, it
Whenever I talk
does.
about death, sometimes around people are like, "Oh my God, it's so morbid," but I'm like, "You're 100% sure you're gonna die. We all are." Um,
It is morbid, but it's just a conversation
you
that
have
you
to
have to
have. You
have
have to even
sometimes.
think about it. We're not
Yeah.
immortal. We all are going to eventually die, and it's like you just have to learn or sometimes prepare yourself for certain grief or whatever. You know, some people who grieve like I people are like, "Oh, um I'm alive imagining somebody die." And I laugh at the tweets or the videos sometimes, but I'm like, it's kind of true where if you know the person is sick or the person is getting older, these are things that you have to start thinking about or start preparing for.
Yeah.
And if you stop acting like it's not going to happen, it helps you better to cope when it actually does happen, because you know it's
And it's easier
inevitable.
for you to come to terms when it does
Because you
happen.
yeah, you were preparing yourself mentally. Not saying you should sit down
Yeah.
every day planning these people's funeral unless it's an enemy, but but yeah, you gotta think about it. You know your mom is sick, you know your dad is sick, you know your mom is getting older, your grandmother, your grandparents is getting older. These are things that you gotta think about. We unfortunately don't live forever.
Forever.
Grief is something that happens in life, whether by losing a friendship, losing someone, because they died. It's something we gotta deal with.
Yep. And I know this has been a heavy episode. The last two were very fun and festive. So sometimes you just have to balance out with like something heavy. And this was that week. But with all that said, this has been another episode of Shiggles. I've been that guy Rickster,
This was Darian, guys.
and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.